Hi, and welcome to Prevention Works. My name is Marianne Mars, and I'm the Executive Director of the Collaborative. And we're here today to talk about tobacco, e-cigarettes, and vaping. And our guests are Kathy O'Reilly from the Vermont Department of Health, Bennington County. She's a chronic disease specialist.
Hi, Marianne.
Hi, Kathy. Victoria Silsby is the tobacco specialist for the Collaborative.
Hi, Marianne.
Hi, and Riley Vogel is a 10th grader at Burton and a member of the Our Voices Exposed group there.
Hello.
Hi, Riley. So we know that the Vermont Department of Health works on, and coalitions in the area like the Collaborative, we work on tobacco cessation, we work on reducing youth marketing for tobacco, and preventing tobacco use in general. What does that have to do with, what's the connection with e-cigarettes and vaping and that those initiatives?
Well, e-cigarettes are really honestly no different than cigarettes. Unfortunately, at this point, they're not regulated by the FDA. So what you get in any individual e-cigarette brand may be very different depending on what the brand is. But the bottom line is, although many people think that they're just, they may be inhaling harmless water vapor, they're really not. Because an e-cigarette contains a battery that activates a heating device that atomizes liquid nicotine, usually in a cartridge. Okay, and that produces a vapor which is inhaled. You're basically inhaling nicotine, which is what you're using with a conventional cigarette as well.
Right. Well, that's interesting. And what Victoria showed here, and we'll have it up on the screen too, is a lot of the different types of e-cigarettes too, which I don't think I've seen them side by side like that. But they go from looking very much like a cigarette to, you know, looking like all kinds of different things really, and much larger. And so the term vaping then, what does that mean?
Well, vapor, okay,
Right.
means that you're inhaling a vapor. That's basically what the e-cigarette does. It atomizes the nicotine, which is liquid, into a vapor that you inhale. Mm-hmm. But it's not water. It actually contains nicotine, and nicotine, just like in a conventional cigarette, goes to the brain and has an effect there.
So what exactly is exhaled then if it's not the water vapor? Because people always say, oh, it's so much better for being around people. So what is in the exhaled product?
Well, it's the same thing that you're going to have in conventional cigarettes. Okay, the same. I mean, you're inhaling nicotine and you're breathing out the byproducts of that.
And there's included in those byproducts are toxic chemicals that form as the e-liquid heats up from the battery. So, and some of those toxic chemicals, what they do is they're heating up. It makes an aerosol, and that's what the misconception is, that it's not actually a vapor or water product, it's an aerosol. And some of those toxic chemicals are the same that are in conventional cigarettes, such as formaldehyde, and the next two words are like unpronounceable, so I'm going to take a stab at it. But acetaldehyde or something.
Acetone, like?
Maybe some acetone type product.
Sure.
I think it's acetaldehyde.
There you go.
Oh, good one.
Thank you.
You see those types of words all the time, so you can pronounce them better.
Acrolein, something like that. And then, of course, then you've got all your metals like tin, nickel, cadmium, lead, and mercury. And that's in the aerosol that you're exhaling.
So even though you can't smell it, it's still as part of what's being exhaled.
And the problem is, because the FDA does not regulate these
Right.
at this point, an individual smoker and the people around them have absolutely no idea what the concentration is, number one, of the nicotine or of these chemicals that are used, that are, that are byproducts as a result of vaping.
Oh, that's really interesting. So like a regular cigarette would have the FDA's approval of how much nicotine is in it and things like that, but for the e-cigs, that's not.
Completely unregulated. So you really, depending on, it could be the concentrations of these chemicals could be very different depending on the brand that you're using.
Right.
And if you make your own e-liquid, e-juice, then it's up to you what's in there.
Right.
Another additive that's sort of the basis of the e-liquid is propylene glycol, which is a colorless alcohol. So you're also getting these chemicals, propylene glycol and like an ethyl alcohol too, which is a component of antifreeze.
Right, one of those laundry lists of all the gross chemicals that are in the tobacco products generally. So I hear, in addition to tobacco and vaping, I always hear a connection about that marijuana has been using. Can you shed any light on that, the connection between vaping and marijuana use also?
Well, I mean, you can, if you go to if you walk down the street, you can see these tobacco product places.
Right.
And you'll see hookahs, just featured there right in the window. Basically the same thing, okay? It's a vapor, okay, or an aerosol that's inhaled. And that's the way marijuana is used a lot, and also e-cigarettes.
So if you bought the venue to do the e-cigarettes, it's the same vehicle that you would use for the marijuana use in them. Okay, good to know. And so I know that in Vermont, the tobacco use rates are sort of holding steady right now, or
Conventional tobacco.
conventional tobacco.
Yeah.
But what's the e-cigarette?
Well,
rates?
e-cigarettes, it's we don't have a lot of, basically the data that we have comes from the Vermont Adult Tobacco Survey, which is a phone survey of about 2,000 people that they do yearly, basically to assess tobacco control efforts in the state of Vermont. They caution that this data is, you can't really compare it to other states or anything like that, but it gives you sort of a handle on the way things are going in Vermont. And so I think that the remarkable thing is that although conventional tobacco rates are holding steady, we're showing an increase in the number of people that actually are starting to move from conventional cigarettes to e-cigarettes, specifically to use them as a quit mechanism.
And are they considered a quit mechanism?
They are not. They are not. They are not.
So
Not-
what I'm gonna, so what are, if somebody wants to quit cigarettes or quit vaping, what are their tools that they can use?
The Vermont Department of Health, first of all, does not recommend e-cigarettes, neither does the FDA or the CDC.
Okay.
Basically because you're still inhaling nicotine, which is having an effect on your brain, which is what causes the addiction.
Right.
So what we recommend are the conventional methods, which are Chantrix, I can't remember some of the other ones, but anyway, we have a website. It's called 802 Quits.
Okay.
If you just go to 802 Quits, type it into your whatever search engine you use, that will bring you to our website, and there are all sorts of fact sheets there, tools for quitting, resources that give you a quit information, whether you want to do it yourself, whether you'd like to do it in person with a quit partner. There's a special little link on the bottom specifically for providers to give them all sorts of information to help people in their quit.
Oh, that's
That is what we recommend as the Vermont Department of Health, the tried and true methods of quitting.
Okay.
Not e-cigarettes.
Okay,
The other
and we'll
thing-
get the 802 quits up at the bottom of the screen too, or at the end of the show.
The other concern about using e-cigarettes as a quit device is you're not breaking that physical habit of bringing something up and down from your mouth. So
Right, it is very much a physical habit of,
So you're getting you're still maintaining that addiction
Right.
to nicotine, but you're not breaking the physical habit either.
right, so it's easy to slide back into
Exactly.
to regular tobacco use. That's great. I want to get Riley talking for a little bit. So I know that you went to the State House for the OVX rally recently. Can you tell us a little bit about what that was like?
It was a lot of fun. So what it is you show up and the whole thing is either OVX or VCAT.
Okay.
OVX stands for Our Voices Exposed,
Okay.
which is mainly in the upper levels of school, high schoolers, or I don't know if it applies to 6th graders or 7th graders, but
The OVX is,
I think the
Ninth.
Vermont Kids Against
Yeah.
Tobacco is the younger
the middle
age.
school, yeah.
Right.
So VCAT is Vermont Kids Against Tobacco.
right.
And so what we did is we went and you would sign up for workshops and they'd have an open orientation and you discuss tobacco, the effects, how to prevent it, how to help prevent it in your town.
Oh, that's really great. Did they talk about e-cigarettes at all up at the OVX rally?
Not that much, which
Oh,
was
that's
really
interesting.
surprising, yeah. But I think it's just because we don't know that much about them yet.
Yeah. And so did they teach you how to talk to other community members about tobacco use? Okay, do you want to tell me a little bit about that? Like what you should go out into and talk to people about?
They said a lot about posters and just spreading the word and
Okay.
everything, and how to get a good message across.
Right. Because the good messages, and at the collaborative, we always try to talk about all the good things that are going on. Is that most kids are not using, and the number used to be, and you probably know better than me right now, that 8 out of 10 Vermont kids are not using tobacco. Now you're telling me that that number might not include e-cigarettes that we don't know yet.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, because there is no, the way we assess tobacco, the adult tobacco survey,
Right.
18 and over, okay? So although there is an 18 to 34-year-old demographic that they report out on, that's not going to include high school students.
Sure.
So the data that we usually rely on for smoking in the state of Vermont, youth smoking, is the YRBS, and there are no questions at this point in the YRBS about e-cigarettes.
Oh, right.
From a publication through the Vermont Department of Health, I've got a statistic that says from 2011 to 2014, the past 30-day use of e-cigarettes increased 9-fold for high school students in the United States.
Wow.
Right. So it went from 1.5%
Right.
to 13.4%.
Which is well over what our rate in Vermont was of the 8 out of 10.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
Between 2/3, the National Youth Tobacco Survey, which is a countrywide survey, I think they said that between 2013 and 2014 alone, e-cigarette use tripled among youth.
Yeah.
It's clearly a mechanism that is it's a marketing tool that tobacco companies use to entice non-cigarette users
Right.
to engage in the use of, and they do that very cleverly by, colors, flavors, bubble gum, e-liquid use and things like
Sure.
that, or cotton candy flavors, pina colada, which are all flavors that younger middle school and high school age population enjoy, as opposed to adults who might choose
Yeah.
a different.
Have you seen that, Riley, in the stores? That sort
I
of.
have.
Right. Does it look like candy advertising to you? Do you
Definitely,
think?
and the placement of it too was a big thing that we talked about at the meeting.
Oh yeah.
Was where the levels of it. We saw some really odd pictures of tobacco right next to the candy section, next to the ice cream. It was just
Right. An interesting message
So-
there. Yeah. So so with the vaping, in addition to other tobacco products, they're using the flavors and advertising in the same way. So there's something called Counterbalance that a lot of people might have seen on the TV that Vermont is doing around tobacco products, but does that include the vaping products as well when they're doing those?
Counterbalance touched very lightly on electronic cigarettes and product placement, but it was, they did include it in that study and the results. But I think the state realized that they could definitely expand in the next round of surveys about the electronic cigarettes, the placement that Riley spoke about, and the marketing.
I think some of the I think the audit data indicated that stores that were located within 1,000 feet of schools were more likely statistically to sell e-cigarettes.
Oh, really interesting. 1,000 feet, that's not incredibly too far
No, it's not.
away from a school,
No, it's
particularly
not.
schools that are located in the centers of towns.
Right. And interestingly enough, if you look at the adult tobacco survey,
Right.
you'll see that 47% of people who use tobacco products use flavored products.
47%.
48% of e-cigarette,
48.
yeah. hmm
Use
They
a
use the
flavor.
flavored product.
That's. Do you have the data on flavored products for regular tobacco use? Because that seems so high.
Chew or snuff or snus, I
Yeah.
think, is 47%.
Yeah.
Regular cigarettes, 22%. Pipe or pipe tobacco, 19%. And cigarillo or little cigar,
And the
17%.
the marketing technique of using the flavored, is that for introductory use, or is that to continued use, or?
Flavored tobacco products have been shown to start tobacco or initiation,
Yeah.
produce initiation in youth.
Because they're a way to hide the harsh flavor or the harshness in general of a regular tobacco product.
Right.
And so if you disguise it with, pina colada or grape or
Clove
dragon fruit or something like that, then you're more likely to.
And are there rules around tobacco having those sorts of flavors versus e-cigarettes because of the FDA regulations? Or
Yes,
is it for
conventional cigarettes,
Sorry,
tobacco,
conventional. I have to use that
conventional tobacco products cannot use those flavors. The only flavor that a conventional product tobacco product you'll find is menthol.
word. And the difference there is that it's not an FDA monitored
Exactly.
piece. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's very interesting.
So Kathy began to speak about placement of stores and advertising and things like that. And you'll notice in our area, the towns are pretty good about, through sign ordinances and things like that, limiting the type of signage that stores can display in their windows or on their entry doors and things like that.
Right, that is very good in our area.
But the other thing to consider is density.
So tell me more about the density piece of it. Is that how many stores are in an area or where they're located, like Kathy's speaking about?
It's a combination between both. It might be, so towns can look at proximity to parks, proximity to schools, how many similar stores do they already have, and things like that. And when you're looking at density factors, it's there to help create a positive, healthy environment in the community. Because the more youth see such stores and are exposed to products or stores that sell those type products, I think youth feel that to youth it becomes a normalized behavior.
Right, and to see them around. Now you're agreeing. Do you want to tell me more about that? I see you nodding your head. Does that make sense to you, or does that?
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
And so you're saying that the density of the stores that sell tobacco products, e-cigarettes, vaping products, that not having them within proximity of a school or something like that creates a healthier community. And Kathy, the data that you had before sort of proves that within 1,000 feet of a school. What was that you had said
More
before?
likely to sell e-cigarettes.
Yeah.
That comes from the audit data. Interestingly enough, too, when we were talking about perceived harm,
Right.
The adult tobacco survey, they actually, most electronic cigarette users don't think there's any harm associated with e-cigarettes. 57% thought they were not at all harmful.
Interesting.
Okay, so that's, it's very, now non-smokers, okay, 53%
Right.
of non-smokers thought they were somewhat or very harmful.
Okay.
Whereas 57% of smokers thought they were not or not at all.
Yeah, and we know in prevention
Harmful.
in general that the lower the perceived risk, if you think something is not very risky, the higher the use rate goes up. So that's sort of a trend line that's just starting now.
Exactly. And so the more you see them,
Yeah.
and the more this perception is out there that they do not cause harm,
Yeah,
the more you will see youth initiating use of electronic cigarettes.
right. So I want to ask about how do we get the message out about that e-cigarettes are as harmful as cigarettes?
Well, I think that's why we're here today.
Yeah.
Is to open up that conversation.
Okay.
And to have kids like Riley go up to Montpelier
Yeah.
and have that experience of participating with, 100 other Vermont kids about tobacco, prevention of use and things like that. And it's a very much sort of a group project to help increase the message and get the exposure out there that there is great harm to this use.
Right.
Speaking of great harm and exposure, e-cigarettes are not included in the Clean Indoor Air Act yet.
Yeah. Right.
So you can go into your favorite coffee shop or supermarket or restaurant and use your electronic cigarette.
So I've seen signs that say no e-cigarette use here. I can't remember where locally.
Well, Act 135,
Okay.
it bans use of e-cigarettes on public school grounds and at public school functions, as well as in licensed child cares, okay? Licensed and regulated child cares.
Okay.
But in terms of a restaurant or the movie theater
Right.
or anything like that, there is no legislation at this point.
Okay. So then what can local businesses, the towns and things like that do to help ensure the protections around e-cigarette use?
So when businesses, well, one thing, the collaborative works very closely with towns and businesses and organizations in creating strong language for tobacco use and creating smoke-free campuses and things like that. So when you're creating that language and that policy, you want to be sure that you're including electronic cigarettes, tobacco substitutes, and products like that.
Great.
Another thing I think that parents need to be aware of is that Act 135 bans the sale of liquid or gel substances that contain nicotine unless the product is contained in child-resistant packaging, because they've seen, and I don't have the statistics at my fingertips, but they've seen an increase in the number of calls to poison control for nicotine poisoning in children, very young children.
Oh, wow.
Because they get into the cartridge or they get into the liquid nicotine and they get poisoned.
So-
And I have never seen a package of it, so I don't even know what that looks like to get into.
But to back up what Kathy was saying, interestingly enough, one of the suggestions when people are filling the electronic cigarette with the e-liquid
Right.
is it's recommended that they wear gloves, protective gloves.
Oh. And that's not a warning for people.
And it's so that they don't
Right.
get that e-liquid
On
on
their-
their skin, because you can get an adverse reaction to the e-liquid on your skin. So Kathy's very
Wow.
good about bringing that up in today's show. And I think it was a local legislative member that got that act passed.
So Act 135 is in place, but the Clean Air Act, we're not in
No,
with that yet.
2016, they're hoping that they might be able to introduce legislation.
But local
regarding that.
businesses can make their own policies.
You can make your own policy.
And towns can consider.
Including e-cigarettes in their, smoke-free park language or town property language, to be sure that they include electronic cigarettes.
That's smart with everything that's sort of on the horizon with it. That's a nice preventative.
I also believe that the FDA is considering regulation of e-cigarettes at this point.
Right.
So anyway.
But
Well, it
sometimes it's easier
creates
to
that
start
healthy-
in
Exactly.
your immediate
Exactly.
community rather than.
It creates
Yeah.
that healthy image so that you're not seeing people in the park
Yeah.
using that electronic device,
Right.
while they're walking or with their dog or watching a baseball game with their kids.
Right. And that I'm sorry.
I
go ahead.
actually do have the statistics. In 2014, poison control centers, and this is from the American Academy of Pediatrics, poison centers in the U.S. reported almost 3,800 exposures to e-cigarette devices and nicotine liquid, compared to only 1,543 exposures in 2013. So that's a huge
up a
increase.
lot.
And a child can be killed by very, very small amounts of nicotine, less than one highly concentrated teaspoon.
Oh, wow. And how much are in those cartridges?
I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
the Act 135 bans the sale of, unless it's in child-resistant packaging, it cannot be sold in the state of Vermont.
And that's for Vermont, but and then we have surrounding towns, states.
States, exactly.
Of course. Very interesting. And so I want to know from Riley what you see on the streets of people either using vaping products or anything. Do you see much of that?
I have not seen any.
Okay.
So far.
Well, now you know what to look for too,
Yeah.
right? We've done that. But that's good to know also, because I like to point out that the young people are more involved in what's going on in prevention, and maybe hopefully not so much in the use, particularly in our community, and that there's people like you on the ground to help educate the community about it. So thank you. So I learned a couple of things today about the stores being 1,000 feet away from the schools and the increase. I learned also about the flavored products. 48% of people are using flavored products when it comes to e-cigarettes, which is a huge amount. And I appreciate you guys for being here. So thank you, Kathy O'Reilly, Victoria
Thank you, Marianne.
Silsby.
Thank you.
And Riley Vogel. I really appreciate this conversation, and I think that it's just a jump start for more conversations as we dive deeper into this sort of new terrain of vaping and e-cigarettes and all that implies for our community. So we hope that this will help you guys make healthy choices in your community. And I'm Marianne Morris, the Executive Director of the Collaborative. Thanks for tuning in to Prevention Works. Have a great day.